Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about just how effing evil the media is.
Coming up next, we have an exclusive interview with Hell's own head honcho, who's here to discuss her brand new passion project.
And I think that a lot of people who watch our show, because we have a number of progressives who watch our show. And if you're a conservative, you might have picked up some of these stories that we're going to be covering in this show. But what we're going to be covering is a lot of stories that haven't gotten as much coverage as they probably should have, and show the way that mainstream media has been systemically manipulating the public for a long time, especially recently, with the biggest fallout being the fallout of the Epstein files is what we're going to start with. Because if you watched the Drudge Report or watched a lot of mainstream news, you would think that these had a bunch of damning things of Trump in them. When in fact, they may actually provide a smoking gun that the Democrats may have killed somebody recently.
What?
Yes, we'll get to this in a second, but the gist being is I always asked, if the Democrats actually had anything that could be used against Trump in the Epstein files, why didn't they release it during the election with Biden, right?
Yeah, right.
Well, we learned why they didn't and why they did now. The way they made it look like Trump had met with somebody underage was by blacking out a person's name. But now we have the real version of this because people leaked the real version of it. Congressmen did, showing.
Oh, they did? Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
So we know whose name was on it. We know that the person's name was on it, testified both in Congress and wrote in her book that Trump had done nothing wrong to her.
Oh, so it was that woman. Okay.
Yes. And that she mysteriously committed suicide, despite saying on multiple occasions she would never commit suicide, only, I think it was a month before the release of the files, or it might have even just been weeks before this quote unquote release. And she needed to be dead during the release. Otherwise, she could immediately come out and say, hey, I said this under oath and I said this in my book, but really, seriously, what are you guys doing? Trump has always been there for me.
Wow. Okay.
So it's worse than it looks. And why did they release this now? It appears they released it because they thought it would make Trump look bad to cover up their bungling of the shutdown, which is just, their base is so mad at them because their base had the impression that they had won because they won these election cycles. And in polling, it was looking like they were winning, except I think they saw the wind. And it was not going to last for long. People were getting mad at the Democrats over the SNAP benefit stuff when Trump rightly pointed out that this was a fight over them trying to give medical care from American taxpayers to illegal immigrants. Note, if you're getting your news from the traditional media, they'd say, oh, no, the shutdown wasn't over that because illegal immigrants couldn't get Medicare anyway and couldn't get health care anyway, except that we know of tons of instances in which they did. It's the same when they said, oh, illegal immigrants can't vote, and yet we had this sting operation that got very little coverage showing nonprofit directors in New York leading up to the Mamdani election literally telling somebody who they thought was an illegal immigrant how to vote and who to vote for.
Sorry?
When did you register to vote?
I did not. I didn't sign anything. They just told me to come here to vote.
What I found most odd is that Pedro Rodriguez would keep telling me that I did not reside at an address that he personally signed the letter saying that I resided at.
He gave me a wink and a nod. He told me, vote for the man whose name begins with the letter M.
And it always really gets to me when they're all like, oh, there's been no documented evidence of large-scale illegal immigrant voting, when we know that Texas, for example, had to remove 2,700 non-citizens from its voter rolls, and that in Florida, even the Democrats would say, oh, it wasn't 180,000 non-citizens who were moved. It was 2,625 non-citizens who were moved. And this isn't coming from some far-right group. This is the ACLU saying this. So we know this is something that happens, and it's just like this narrative that gets repeated over and over again that it doesn't happen. And that's what the Trump administration was putting their foot down on. And the longer that went on, the more that would burn the Democratic coalition. So I will say that in the short term, they were winning on this. Well, potentially they cheated in a few elections. If you look at the Mamdani ballot situation, that was shocking to me when I saw that. The Zohran Mamdani's name.
What Mamdani ballot situation?
The guy who just won in New York?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought
what's
you knew
with
about
the
this. Yeah,
ballots?
his name was on the ballot multiple times, and it was on the
Oh,
ballot
that.
multiple times before the only real competitor to him was on the ballot.
Right.
This was like very deliberate to hide a chance to vote for the real competitor. And then there's been significant foul play in the Virginia race that I might add that in post if people are interested in that. But yeah, it looks really bad. And like when you look at the
Wow.
Mamdani race, you're like, he literally couldn't have lost the race given the way the ballot was structured. And that's really horrifying to me that we live in a country where something.
No, while I have been able to find legal justification for having Mamdani's name on the ballot twice and for having Cuomo's name later on the ballot, I have been able to find no legal justification for justifying Cuomo's ballot measure and leaving the 3 left justified boxes that would have left his name more visible if you just ordered it in the normal way it would have been ordered, blank. And I'd also point out here that even if something is quote unquote the legal way it's done, that doesn't mean that it's not also cheating. You can put laws on the book that give one party an unfair advantage in a particular area. That's exactly what some of the Supreme Court decisions have been about preventing. That's exactly what Voting Rights Act stuff is about. The idea that you're like, oh yeah, it's totally normal to have a candidate listed twice before his primary competitor because of these laws that we put on the book. That doesn't make it fair. This point is extremely important. I hate when people, and this has been a constant thing on this podcast, when people are like, well, what they did was legal, therefore it's a non-issue. Just because something is legal doesn't mean that we shouldn't be talking about it in the news so that the laws can be changed to make our elections fair. I don't think any sane thinking person looking at this ballot would say that this election was fair.
Basically what I'm saying is him winning is not as much as I had thought a implication that Democratic sentiment is overflowing right now, but more of a he just cheated.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, when you saw the ballot, did you sort of like, oh yeah, there's no way the other major candidate could have won?
It is pretty confusing. Yeah. Yeah, to be fair.
If you had been on the ballot twice and the only person running against you was after like 8 other candidates, you wouldn't have thought you could win. Or you would have said, oh no, you would have been like, yeah, I'm going to win. I don't care if anybody knows who I am.
No, I mean, yeah, it has also been shown, I think, in various studies that your positioning on a ballot is going to mess with your odds of winning. I also remember when I unsuccessfully ran for office, how crestfallen I felt when my position was on the only thing on the flip side of the ballot, and a lot of people probably missed it. Filling out their
so
ballot.
you see, it matters where you are on the ballot.
Yeah.
And I note here, this actually gets to me because I think I only saw this on Asmongold. I've literally not seen it covered by the mainstream news at all.
Wow.
Which really shocked me. And also interesting, we recently learned that now our highest overlapping fan base is Asmongold, which made me feel really good. And now we have a big overlapping fan base with Nux as well. I'm like, wow, we're getting into the big leagues. And Tim Pool is another big overlap for us. But I was surprised to see that. But then the next one that I want to go into here is the text messages, because again, this is another thing that I've also only seen from streamers. It's not that news hasn't covered it, but I've only seen it heavily covered as somebody who checks the Drudge Report every day, which is an aggregator and should be showing this stuff if it's being covered a lot. Is so a House of Representative member, okay, Stacey Plaskett. Now, I will note she is a Democrat, mind you. This was after Giuffre Epstein, so in 2019, after he was convicted as a sex offender and pleaded guilty to it, right? So he was known as a sex offender at this point.
Okay.
So we now have a series of texts from her where Michael Cohen was testifying, attempting to take down Trump, where she was communicating with Epstein, where it was clear that she was basically acting within the U.S. House as Epstein's mouthpiece in an attempt to take down Trump, because Epstein saw Trump as one of his core enemies, which again was made clear multiple times in the leaks. Now, the Democrats are like, oh, this proves that Epstein looked down on Trump and Epstein was a bad guy, so Trump must be a really bad guy. And I'm like, that's not the way it works. It proves that Epstein for a long time has had an existential fear of Trump, and they were not at all buddies, and that Epstein likely had nothing on Trump or he would have used it, given when you see what Epstein was doing during this congressional hearing. Okay.
Well, Asmongold's simple take is that it appears to be that they were friends and they had a falling out. It's simple.
Yes. And the falling out was over Epstein creeping on young girls.
Yeah. At Mar-a-Lago.
It's also clear that Trump knew that Epstein creeped on young girls and tried to tell the public about it in not uncertain terms. There are clips of in the past where he's like, yeah, Epstein likes them young. Like in a, like, you should do something about this. Like, I'm telling you,
look into this.
The news, like, look into this. Like, anyway, and you can see why Epstein might have been freaked out about Trump saying that and why this may have caused the fight. But we've gone over that in other videos. I want to get to this. So Epstein texts her, Cohen brought up Rona, keeper of secrets. This is referring to Rona Gaff, Trump's longtime executive assistant, but misspelling her name. And then Plaskett responds, Rona, question mark. So note here, she then says, quick, I'm up next. Is this an acronym? So she had no idea who Rona was. Rona was this guy who was on Michael Cohen's assistant. Epstein was tweeting to a U.S. congressional representative, a Democratic one, basically, you need to ask about Rona when you get on stage. She then she basically says it, quick, I'm up next, is this an acronym? Showing she had no idea who Rona was. So she's going to go on stage and ask about Rona because Epstein told her to. Okay? Then Epstein says, that's his assistant. Then Epstein says, he's opened the door to questions regarding who are the other henchmen at Trump org. Plaskett goes, yep, very aware and waiting my turn. And then after she gives her deposition, Epstein texts her, good work. Literally sitting, and she's still in Congress, by the way. She's a non-voting member because she's from the U.S. Virgin Islands, but she is acting as a
we elect and pay non-voting members of Congress.
What?
In the U.S. Virgin Islands, does she receive a salary for this?
I'm pretty sure I know she receives $30,000 from Epstein, but yeah.
I'm more disturbed, honestly, if taxpayers are paying for her.
She receives a salary of $174,000 a year.
No. This is a big deal. That this was after we knew Epstein was a convicted sex offender, and he had a Democratic congressional representative who was able to ask questions during hearings, notably in this event, in an effort to take down Trump as Epstein's mouthpiece, and then told, like, good job, like being patted on the head like a dog. Like, that is wild to me. As Asmongold said when he went over this, oh my God, is Epstein her GPT?
Oh God.
Okay. So another thing that I wanted to go on here was the chance, because this has opened, the Epstein files have again opened the possibility that the Clintons may have offed someone to hide an affair that Hillary was having.
I just love this recurring theme.
Well, yeah, this didn't hit me. And then I was like, oh, wait, yeah, I remember when Republicans used to say that, and I thought they were crazy conspiracy theorists. Yeah. And now that I've realized that a lot of like conspiracy theorists are batting 10 for 10 these days, I should probably revisit those particular deaths. As well as we will revisit the death of Victoria, the person who was holding up the release of the Epstein files, because basically Democrats had no reason to really release
and the redacted victim in the most recently released documents.
Yeah. Also, you can say, why did Trump fight the release? Well, I mean, the release has happened now, and it didn't really have anything that made Trump look particularly bad. Our previous guess was that it was intelligence, either Saudi or Israeli intelligence. I still think that's the case. And it just wasn't in what was released.
Though most recently he's expressed support for releasing all the files. I mean, now it's a considered a relative inevitability. I think currently Kelsey voting or betting odds that the Epstein files just totally get released are at like 96%. So everyone's pretty confident that everything's going to come out anyway. So then why would not Trump express support for it? But yeah, my guess is that the biggest reason why he didn't before was that there was too much strategically for the US to lose if we did release all of that information, even though it would be satisfying.
It might have been that he thought that this stuff would make him look bad when it really doesn't.
Could be.
I do think the fact that he pushed for the Epstein files to be fully released after this particular release happened about him makes me think that this was what all of the fuss was about for him. Either that, or, as I've seen some Democratic news sources wringing their hands about, that he received some sort of assurance that the files had been scrubbed of things related to him. Yet that seems unlikely. I'm sure we're going to get a bunch of files of things related to Trump. I think that what we learned from this is it was that specific instance that he was so worried about.
I don't know. But anyway, to continue here, because it's actually been surprising how like nothing burger it is and we'll go into other stuff here, but an interesting here once is that Epstein wrote, Nussbaum, White House counsel, Hillary doing naughties with Vince, implying that he had information. Now, note, he had no proof of this information, but it implied that he had information that Vince Foster, a longtime associate of the Clintons from Arkansas, where he worked with Hillary at the Rose Law Firm starting in the 1970s. He served as deputy White House counsel in the early days of Bill Clinton's presidency. On July 20th, 1993, Foster was found dead in Fort Marcy Park, Virginia, from a gunshot wound to the mouth, which was officially ruled a suicide by multiple investigations, including an independent counsel by Ken Starr. But anyway, however, the death has long fueled conspiracy theories due to inconsistencies like the lack of fingerprints on the gun. That's a big inconsistency, a missing bullet, and witness statement discrepancies. Rumors of an affair between Hillary and Foster predate the Epstein email. They appeared in books like Ross and Keller's The First Family Detail, 2014, and Christopher Anderson's Bill and Hillary, The Marriage, 1999, citing anonymous sources like state troopers who claimed to see Foster visiting the Clintons' home during Bill's absences. Hillary Clinton was consistently denied any romantic involvement, describing Foster as a close friend and colleague. The Epstein allegation revives these old claims. Now, I think that Hillary Clinton is the type of person who would cheat on Bill Clinton. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, they seem to have had a near open marriage from what I can see. She didn't seem particularly mad when he was caught cheating.
I know, but she just seems more interested in practical maneuvering for influence and power.
Come on, they're debauched people. If I do not think
He just doesn't seem like a fun person. Like, I look at Bill and he looks like a man who could indulge in hedonic fun times. Hillary doesn't look like that kind of person.
Yeah, but I can see Hillary as the type of person who would love an attractive man who fawned over her and told her how great she was and how amazing she was and how beautiful she was. And I don't think that it was about the sex for her. I think it was about all the other stuff, but it seems within her character. Do I think that Hillary Clinton is the type of person who would lie if you didn't have definitive proof she had cheated? Yes, absolutely. Like, that is completely within her character. So her denying it tells us nothing. So really, it just seems broadly likely to me. Do I think she's the type of person who would organize a hit on somebody? Well, let's go further evidence on that, okay? And by the way, we're also going to get to the BBC covering things up and everything like that and all the media stuff. But I'm like, it's weird that I was unaware of how plausible this stuff was.
Also, Anna's cancellation. My gosh.
Yeah, talk about that, Simone.
Right. So for those of you not familiar with the Red Scare podcast, it is hosted by Anna and Dasha. Anna is also an actress, most notably, I guess, like recently, she was in Succession, the HBO show that was really popular. And she most recently it hit the news because she was dropped by her talent agency and movie that she was working on after she and Dasha had Nick Fuentes on the Red Scare podcast, which is really crazy because I think arguably they've had much more controversial people on the podcast in the past. And we've
Like
all
who?
been under the impression that we're past the age
Yeah.
of cancellation, especially due to what I would call like social contagion fears. Like, oh,
Yeah,
you
not even for
talked
their
with the
view.
bad person, therefore we cancel you. I mean, I can understand cancellation because you yourself espouse the wrong views, capital W, capital V. But like the fact that she and Dasha had Nick Fuentes on their podcast, and again, they've had very controversial people
Like our
on their
friend
podcast in
Razib
the
has been
past.
on their podcast.
Yeah, well, Razib, no, he's not. Like I'm talking way more controversial than that. But it is really, really wild to me. What I think happened is that this isn't so much a media being corrupted thing as it is that the talent agency and likely the movie in question as well both had people, possibly even the same person, who were like, it's me or Anna. Like, I will walk if you do not get rid of her because of what she did. Because I still think in the end, that's why cancellations took place in the first place. It's that businesses and individuals felt like they would lose essential sources of income or essential audiences or essential customers if they did not bend to the whims of a different contingent that was making demands, and basically a me or them demand. So I think that that's what happened. Who knows? Because we have no insight into this. We have no insider insight into this. But I still think it's really, it's something, because I didn't think this was possible post Vibe Shift. I thought we were beyond that, and clearly we're
Yeah,
not.
no, that upset me, and that's what galvanized me on the Israel thing. Like, we need to make a move on this. The right needs to make a move on this. Otherwise,
and by the Israel thing, you're pointing to a different podcast in which you encouraged a different policy among conservatives, in which we financially cut off Israel and stopped sending military support, and instead ally in different ways, because
well, it completely undermined the Democrats in the next election cycle.
Yeah, but like also this very consistent conservative support of Israel, sort of in a more unquestioning way.
Well, it doesn't even matter because Netanyahu was planning on canceling it in 2028 anyway. So,
right.
like, why not do it now when we can claim the victory for it, right?
Yeah, basically the point being that like we need to sort of break this flashpoint, which appears to be fueling what some people are calling a civil war on the right. And Anna's cancellation, I think, is independent of that. But I mean, of course, them interviewing Nick Fuentes is maybe part of that. Maybe it's just that someone really hates Nick Fuentes, and Anna having him on her podcast was enough for that. But yeah,
well, I mean, and it would really piss off Ben Shapiro. So I find that hilarious.
Yeah.
But anyway, to continue here. So here, moving forwards, what made people think that this might have been an assassination? All right. So a torn resignation letter was found in Foster's briefcase days after his death, accusing the White House, FBI, press, GOP, and Clinton of various issues. It had been smudged palm print, later identified as Berna Nasabam's, but no fingerprints. 3 handwriting experts originally suggested it was a forgery, although it later did not appear to be a forgery. But I think it's even worse if it's not a forgery. He's got a note in his bag being like, I'm going to expose the Clintons, that after he is found dead in unusual circumstances.
I don't know. That seems so suspicious. If you write a resignation letter that you ultimately don't plan on submitting, you don't just like tear it and then put it back in your desk.
Well, it was in a bag, yeah. Foster was holding a Colt 38 special in his right hand and his thumb through the trigger guard. In his right hand with his thumb through the trigger guard. Conspiracy theorists claim the gun was placed post-mortem, the body was moved or staged, and that there was no exit wound, based on a Park police officer's official misstatement, they said. Blonde hair, carpet fibers on his suit, and semen in his underwear were highlighted as odd. That is odd. Why would there be semen in your underwear?
I don't know. You didn't clean up after diddling yourself very well.
That is not an issue that I think men have.
Oh, okay. I don't know how this works.
Unless he'd had like an affair at work. Oh, who might he have had an affair with? Anyway, to continue. Suggesting the body was transported or involved in foul play. On July 22nd, 1993, Whitewater-related documents were removed from Foster's office and sent to the Clintons' personal attorney, raising questions about tampering cover-ups. Then the next one that is often said to be part of the Hillary body trail is Mark Middleton, former Clinton White House aide, who facilitated Jeffrey Epstein's visits to the White House in the 1990s. He died in May 7th, 2022 at Heifer Ranch in Perryville, Arkansas. Authorities ruled it as suicide, but the unusual method and connections have fueled conspiracy. Method and the seed. Middleton was found hanging from a tree with an extension cord around his neck and a shotgun wound to the chest. The shotgun was located 30 feet away with a gun case and buckshot in his nearby SUV. He reportedly stood on a bench tied to the cord, shot himself and fell, flinging the gun due to recoil. No blood was visible on the body, and initial media reports, e.g. Daily Mail, claimed no sign of a weapon, although that was later corrected when the weapon was found 30 feet away. The tree was reportedly only 80% of the height needed for typical hanging, with no platform or ladder mentioned beyond the bench. The dual method, shooting versus hanging, seemed overly elaborate, leading to claims it was a staged suicide. Middleton's ties to Epstein further enhance this. They say that the lack of blood was due to rapid death. Wait, that doesn't make a lot of sense. I guess the heart wasn't pumping as fast, so there was less blood. That seems implausible with a shotgun, because a shotgun is not going to remove the heart.
The odder thing is the combination of things, and the shotgun that far away from the body.
Yeah, from kickback, I don't buy that.
Also, just shoot yourself if that's what it comes down to. Why the hanging? That seems like so much more work.
Yeah.
And I'd note on the Clinton body count thing, I'm revisiting them only because I didn't give them a fair shake the first time I heard about these stories, not because I actually think that any of these were likely assassinations. Even with the story that we'll get to in a second, the stories that I'm talking about today, I still lean towards these are probably not assassinations. Whereas the story we talked about yesterday was the Trump attempted killer. That I think was very obviously foul play on behalf of the FBI, and you can watch our episode on that. With this stuff, I'm still not entirely convinced, but I will say that it's worth giving it a shake. When we're entering a point in the timeline where when I look back on things that were previously labeled conspiracy theories, a lot more of them than I would have suspected or bet have turned out to be accurate or more evidence-based than I originally suspected. So I think it's worth revisiting them occasionally.
Okay, so now the thing that I talked about earlier, the thing that came out that the Democrats had to wait to release until this woman had died. This was November 2025. It said, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump, and added that the alleged victim's name that was later released to the public spent hours at my house with him. He never once has been mentioned. Note here, why didn't he say what he had done or use a euphemism for what they had done if he had done more than literally just spent time with her at the house, especially given the fact that she had repeatedly said that Trump did nothing. And I'll note here, the dog that didn't bark is a literary reference to a Sherlock Holmes story implying significant something that didn't happen. So again, that also implies that nothing happened there, right? Like he's trying to get evidence on Trump and he was unable to get evidence on Trump. Now, multiple sources have claimed that the name was Virginia Graf's name. Let's see who these sources are.
Well, and that specifically the reason it was redacted was not to protect the name of any particular victim, but to make it seem more incriminating than it was, because she was on the record as
we know that typically
Trump.
You do not redact names in a situation like this if the person is deceased. So it's very sus that it was redacted. It basically means it was redacted intentionally to try to make it look like Trump had done something he didn't and use a dead woman's reputation to do that, which is very bad and a very bad look. Note here, Democrats released an email of Epstein that highlighted that Trump, quote unquote, knew about the girls. We know that Trump said that. I'm confused about this. Trump tried to make it that is why Trump blew up his relationship with Epstein, because Epstein was creeping on younger girls, right? Trump has always said that from the very beginning, and it's been in the earliest recounted records of this. So I don't see that as particularly damning. Let's look at the car crash, right? Okay, so About a month before her death, this is Victoria, right? On March 24th, 2025, Giuffre was involved in a suspicious bus accident in Western Australia. She posted about it online, saying that she was hospitalized with severe injuries and given only 4 days to live, but miraculously recovered. Now, obviously, given the fact that she died just months after this, and it appeared that they were looking to get her dead to release these files, as soon as Democrats had an interest in
She was final destination.
Right? Now, also, her father, Sky Roberts, publicly rejected suicide, saying that there's no way. She took her own life, demanding an independent probe. And I would know that was people in my family. Like some people in my family, if they died, I just feel like, no, that's not possible. Oh, by the way, if I end up committing suicide, I would never commit suicide. I want that on the record, okay? If I commit suicide, I was offed for what I am saying.
Well, I think that it's different if we have like great grandchildren and we feel like we're not useful anymore.
Oh yeah. If I'm an old person, I'm not useful. I'm talking about like in the middle of my advocacy work. If I'm still a public advocate, right?
Yeah. No. Like, I mean, again, none of our children are grown yet. Like, it's very obvious that we wouldn't commit suicide. I mean, I think even when we have the ability to be useful in the form of caring for grandchildren, we're not going to want to do that. Oh, by the way, I've noticed recently with regard to the S word, people are just cutting the sound for that one part when they say the word.
Oh, really?
Which seems to help with the algorithm. So something to consider.
Also, days after her death, a handwritten note from Giuffre was found calling for "quote unquote" justice. Now, what's interesting further is this case gets weirder. By the way, so
how did it get weirder?
She claims that the bus was traveling at 68 miles per hour and that struck her vehicle, causing life-threatening injuries. Right? Remember, she said,
Yes.
My life is at risk. In contrast, the Western Australian police described it as a minor crash. No reported injuries, and only about $2,000 in damage to her car's taillight. Said that the bus clipped her, and it was being driven at 46, not 68. It said the car suddenly turned into its path, and it wasn't a major impact. He didn't even notice Giuffre at the scene, and only learned later from an elderly driver about the passenger was a quote-unquote black eye. This gets really weird because the driver said that he hadn't even noticed, and he didn't even report this to the next day. So either she is just completely manufacturing the story for sympathy or something, or this is a hit and somebody paid some people off in a rural police department. I don't know what I think is more plausible. I guess it's more plausible that she made this up, but then again, she did disappear shortly afterwards, which was a little weird. Anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, clearly someone is not representing the truth very accurately.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is.
So next thing we're going to go over, I don't know if you've looked at the Russiagate and just how much of that was like an actual case of really shady stuff that Obama did.
No, Obama? The whole thing of Trump being elected by or Russian operatives playing a huge role in the 2016 election. That's what you're referring to, right?
Well, they didn't.
Right. The allegations that Russian operatives played a huge role in
I'll
Trump's
go into this a bit
2016
more.
election.
But essentially, Obama did something really weird, which was go to a number of senior appointees he had within the DOJ and tell them to put together this dossier. He's basically like, I need you to a group of handpicked officials, which, wasn't the officials that you would pick if you were trying to choose the most competent or best researchers. He basically picked the collection of the 5 most cronyistic appointees that he had within the DOJ.
Oh.
He then appointed them directly, which is not a normal thing for a president to do, to write a dossier on Russia election interference on behalf of Donald Trump. Then when somebody Rogers, who was the director of National Security Agency, the NSA, came back because he was like, I forgot, like on leave or on vacation. He was like freaked out at what was happening. And he tried to ask to have it shut down. And he wrote, I've just returned from a TDY overseas and have been updated on the current status of the efforts to produce a joint project related to Russian attribution and intent for the DNC DCC hacks. However, I wanted to reach out to you directly to let you know of some concerns I've had with what I am hearing of my folks. Specifically, I asked my team if they had sufficient access to underlying intelligence and sufficient time to review the intelligence on both of these. My team raised concerns. And I'm not going to go further here because it's a very long email. But he basically says, what? Like, you need to stop this. And my team is being blocked from accessing specific information, which is critical to make inference on this. And why did you assign it to my team, the one guy who would have pushed back when I was away on vacation, basically, or on a DOJ leave, like researching something maybe. Now, the longer part of the reply I'm going to leave out here, but part of it was, we may have to compromise on our quote unquote normal modalities. He literally put normal in square quotes here. Normal modalities, since we must do this on such a compressed schedule. Why did they need to do it on a compressed schedule? Other than to get something out there that fits their narrative before Trump comes into office.
Oh dear.
So what I'm saying is I was unaware, because as a person who consumed liberal media at the time, of just how disproven the Russiagate controversy was. And in fact, previous investigations that have been done, not by the people with obvious biased agendas, have shown that the reality is that Russian interference with the election was completely aimed at just making people doubt the results of the election more broadly. Right. Basically, they set up traps for both Democrats and Republicans to try to inflame the crazy parts of both parties at about equal rates from what they've seen, or just wherever they thought they could get crazier stuff. And so by publishing this, Obama was literally assisting the very stated efforts of the Russian misinformation campaign.
Wow.
Crazy.
So if you were watching mainstream media at the time and didn't hear about this, one of the IRA's, this was the Russia election interference wing's primary operations, was a Blacktivist page that focused on things like racial injustice, police brutality, trying to create the narrative of Black people being disproportionately victimized to get them politically radicalized. E.g., this was the predecessor. Russiagate was the predecessor to what ended up becoming Black Lives Matter. In fact, if you look at this is an NPR that I'm reading from here, right? NPR I'm reading from, a report titled, Senate Report, Russians Use Social Media Mostly to Target Race in 2016, quote, and using ads was location targeting, quote, principally aimed at African Americans in key metropolitan areas, end quote. The Russian information operations focused on page like Blacktivist, which garnered 11.2 million engagements with Facebook users. As a side note, this is why I get so frustrated with the Republicans who act like Russia is like our ally or something. They saw Democrats make this claim, i.e. that Russia supported the Republican Party, and they just unironically believed it and went along with it when it was media misinformation. If you have a problem with the Black Lives Matter movement, then you have a problem with Russian election interference. They are your enemy. So, yes, there was definitely instances in which Russia tried to radicalize Republican voters, but there were equal instances in which they tried to radicalize Democratic voters. As a great example of this, May 27th, 2016 in Houston, one Russia-backed page, Heart of Texas, was posting right-wing secessionist anti-Islamic protest, Stop the Islamicization of Texas. Meanwhile, a separate Democratic page that they ran, titled United Muslims of America, organized the counter-protest to the protest that their right-wing protest was organizing. And we even see early in 2016, IRA documents instructed trolls to support Bernie Sanders. To any extent that Trump was, this actually is the key to understanding why it appears in some looks at the data that Russia was supporting Trump more than Hillary. It wasn't that they were supporting the Republicans more than the Democrats. It's that they thought Trump was a spoiler candidate, like Bernie. That's why they supported him.
Okay. That's a blast from the past, but that's pretty bad.
Oh, and I'm sure you've been seeing this, but it is uniquely bad for any of our fans who haven't. there have been 2 instances in which BBC has been found to very deceptively edit a tape to make it look like Trump is calling for a violent insurrection on the Capitol, when we know
for January 6th. Yeah.
Yeah, what?
On January 6th.
Yeah, on January 6th. Basically, well, I'll play the tape.
And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. We're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them.
But when you look at the real tape, it's very clear that there was nothing of the sort. Like, somebody sat down and was like, I am going to deceptively edit this. But it gets worse, because since then, further leaks have come out that people in the room when it was happening, like when the tapes were being reviewed for air, said, we can't air this. This is intentionally deceptive. And they were dismissed. And then after it went to air, a guy, who was it?
At least someone has a very satisfying I told you so. This week must feel so good for them. So smug.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Well, no, it was actually every batch had a Republican and a Democrat who was supposed to like tell them if they weren't allowed to do stuff or if they were doing something egregious. And it was the Republican who was supposed to do that who said this.
A Whig or a Tory, I mean, or
they just ignored him. But anyway, then there was a separate whistleblower. So the whistleblower, Michael Prescott, a former independent advisor to the BBC's Editorial Guidelines and Standards Committee, repeatedly went to high-level people at the BBC. He claimed his warnings were dismissed and ignored, and he attempted multiple times to reach out to BBC executives. He even described Jonas Munro as being defensive when asked about this. So they knew they were lying. They knew that they had lied, and somebody went to them repeatedly saying, you guys need to stop this, was a 19-page dossier that he completed to be like, you guys need to address this, you guys need to address this, you guys need to address this. They did address the first instance, but with some resignations, but they haven't done anything further to address the second instance, which was a completely separate team.
Oh, goodness.
Showing that this is endemic. And note, this was during a period where the U.S. aid was funding BBC media action to a tune of 2.6 million a year to, I think it was 2.4 million USD. It was 2.6 million pounds.
So were the British taxpayers not paying them enough? I mean, aren't there those cars that drive around the UK?
I love it how they're like, oh, that wasn't to the BBC. That wasn't important. Then we cut it off. And all of a sudden the BBC is doing this big Cry Me a River campaign about how they're not getting enough money to do anti-US lying propaganda. The BBC needs to be shut down, and I think that this is something the Republican administration should lean on more as a major issue. Be like, the BBC is an active threat to the American alliance with the UK, given that it is publishing anti-American hate speech. Other terrorist organizations like Hope Not Hate need to be labeled as terrorist organizations, as they can't be funded by the British government anymore. They've done hit pieces on us before and had undercover operatives in our organizations before. So you should see our piece on the connections that prove that they are.
I struggle with this because the BBC has produced some of my, amazing
a long
shows.
time ago. They have not produced anything good in a long time. Now it's modern Doctor Who.
Well, yeah, okay. But that implies, though, that it could course correct. It can theoretically be.
It cannot.
With some severe
the licensing
reform.
fee needs to be shut down, and the government support needs to be shut down. The BBC has become. I think we have an episode on how evil the BBC is. Did we ever air that episode?
Air what episode?
The episode on how evil the BBC is.
I don't think so.
And I should look into our backlog because I know I fully edited it. It's a good episode. The BBC is very evil. They're basically like a weird scam on the British public that like targets the British poor. It's weird. And then note, we also had things like this in the US, was like the MSNBC re-editing Joe Rogan to say she's the hero. She's the one that everybody was waiting for.
I forgot that. Right.
Yeah.
Wait, was that the BBC?
No, that was the MSNBC in the United States.
Oh, okay.
But the point I'm making here is the media is
selective remixing is not unheard of.
An active manipulation campaign on the American public at this point. I think we need to be more aggressive about holding them to account. The fact that people freaked out that Jimmy Kimmel, late night has replaced a lot of the media, was being held to account for lying. Okay. Lying, not getting something wrong or telling a joke that attacked Trump, lying about an assassin of a dead guy, right? Like, it wasn't like a small thing and people freaked out and he got his job back. Like, we need to be more aggressive about misrepresentations in media, and media does need to be either held to account or need to have any ties to governments removed. And I think that it's very important in the United States that we do cut off NPR, and in the UK, in the BBC licensing program where everyone has to pay for a TV.
It is pretty wild. People, especially all the hilarious ways that people try to avoid those fees. Very entertaining.
I never paid mine.
You never paid yours?
I think I might have, but most of the time I was there, I didn't.
Yeah, I think a lot of people try to avoid that, hide their TVs in closets, etc. But
literally, I cannot believe they go around with like vans to like scan your house.
That's crazy. I mean, now it would be a lot.
Britain is a dystopia. Britain is a dystopia. We need to retake that country.
We seriously do, though. It's we can save it.
I had a call with who was it? Times London today, because they're doing a piece on us, and yeah, it's like, you guys live in a dystopia. You know that, right? Like, what a miserable hellscape.
Did they agree?
You didn't push back. I was like, people get.
I knew it was bad when I went to the Johannesburg subreddits and came across all these people in the UK who were like, Johannesburg's looking really good right now.
We had that within our show, is the aristocratic utensil saying, oh yeah, I'm thinking of moving from the UK to Johannesburg. At least I don't get arrested for memes.
No, but later he said he was always there and he didn't know what we were talking about. So I'm so confused.
Wait, he said he was always in Johannesburg?
Yeah, so I don't know what's going on.
No, he definitely said that on our podcast.
I know, both of us were very much under the impression that he was in the UK. So I don't know. Don't ask me. But anyway, yeah, I actually am under the impression that people do understand the extent to which the media has become extremely biased. I think that one of the reasons why figures like Nick Fuentes are rising so much is that people are over-indexing on authenticity of just like complete unfilteredness. And Nick Fuentes does that even when he goes too far. So they like that, and they just can't stand any sign of inauthentic, what's the word? Like condescension.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I actually think that these institutions have seen.
But I think you would be
largely
authentic without, being mean. And I think that that's where like Asmongold does a great job. And that's why I was so glad to see that he's our number one overlap channel. We can be wholesome Asmongold. I mean, Asmongold is wholesome as Asmongold, but married, and like if in an alternate reality where he gets married and has kids.
I still hope that for him.
Well, he said, I can't keep a tree, like a house plant, alive. How am I supposed to keep a kid alive? And I'm like, it's way easier. You'll figure it out.
But it wouldn't even be him, because he is more of a traditional guy. Like, he wants a wife who would just be a stay-at-home wife and or mother. So she would just do it all. She would manage the house.
I can't imagine what a wholesome dad Asmongold would be. He'd be the best dad.
Sweet. Yeah.
And I know,
great dad.
I know if he had kids, he'd probably like start cleaning up and clean a lot of the stuff out of his house.
No, he would. If he were to marry a woman, I'm sure she would almost certainly insist to live in a different house. He might keep his childhood home and still like film in the attic. Honestly, like, how you have like your bedroom and stuff, and like it's your
my bedroom is super dirty,
terrifying
outside of this small window that you guys see,
rat nest. And like I almost feel like he might just maintain his home as that, possibly even like sleep there for a certain number of
you don't need to sleep in the same house as your wife. Let her raise the kid,
right? But like I think she'd have a clean house that she maintains, and like she would take care of their kids, and he would have that life, but he would maintain a space for his Asmongold ways in streaming. That's how I see it working for him. And if he could find a woman and there are lots of women who would, I'm sure, be super down for that, that would be sustainable. I really hope he has that. It would be great if he can, because you have that, right? Like, you get to live your life. Like, you have your room the way you want it.
Well,
You have
I've been thinking,
your
and maybe
stuff.
you can give me a feel of this, because we were looking recently at overlap channels, and we have things like Nuxtaku, Asmongold, and then Temple. And Temple actually the higher overlap with us than Nux. And I realized in my head that like Nux and Asmongold fall into a totally different brain category than Temple, where Temple feels very inauthentic compared to them, and more like a.
Maybe that's because he came from Vice, like he came from I mean, really, Vice is mainstream media, but like, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, he came from the media world professionally first.
But I wonder where we come off to people. Are we more Nux Asmongold, or are we more Temple? Anyway.
Who knows?
By the way, fun thing from the episode that we ran today on SSRIs sterilizing people.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the comments were talking, because I had talked about opioid agonists, about using opioid agonists and then it curing things like depression or anxiety for them, like permanently afterwards.
That's wild.
And I just think opioid agonists are like a hugely underrated,
super
tool.
Underrated. Yeah.
It's literally an anti-drug. It removes your brain from being able to create the types of chemicals that drugs use to addict you to things. So now Facebook can't addict you, and masturbation can addict you, and like gambling can addict you, which is fantastic, right? Anyway, the final thing is what I'm having for dinner tonight. I assume we don't have any. Do we have any onions left?
We do have onions, but what I was going to suggest is that we just go pick up a bunch more peppers for you tomorrow. If you want to do more of the whatever that steak.
Well, what I was thinking of, instead of doing the pepper beef, we could do a Mongolian beef tonight, because that just uses chives.
We can if you want to.
Unless you really don't want to.
Well, you've just been doing the same thing for like 5 nights in a row.
I really like it.
7 nights in a row. Really. You don't want Buldak. You don't want Burmese mint chicken. You don't want crab cow or whatever it is. You don't want.
Oh, Buldak might be good. Buldak's really good.
Curry. Sorry, like what is it? Pumpkin coconut soup, or.
Well, I liked it so much last night, Simone. After I ate it last night, I just kept thinking, I want to eat this until my stomach hurts. And so
Okay. So you want Mongolian beef?
Mongolian beef with lighter on the dark soy sauce recipe this time, and just less of that and more of the chives.
So basically the sauce should be very, very light. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can always go heavier with oyster sauce or hoisin sauce if you want.
Okay. I will do that.
Because that's fine. Like, that's no salt. The problem is just the salt from last time.
Okay. Then I shall do that.
And I think it's just about volume. I do a lower volume.
Of sauce.
And cook it down before you put because it's coming from frozen, we should probably do it together.
I can just let the beef sit at room temperature, so it's thawed out by the time I put it in the wok to cook it with the vegetables at the very end. Because you don't want it to be covered in the sauce too much, do you? You just want it to kind of be like singed at the very end. No? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's fine if it's covered with the sauce, but I don't want it to be as boiled in the sauce.
Yeah, you don't want it sagified.
And it is good to be pressed against hot pan side, because then you can get the searing effect.
Okay. So sear it. I will attempt to. Well, I don't know if I really can at that stage. I don't know. I'll see what I can do, my friend, and I'll make some fresh rice, so it'll smell nice and ricey.
Ooh.
And delicious downstairs. I love fresh cooked rice.
I'm wondering if you should put in onion.
I mean, you want me to saute onion?
No,
just fresh chives, and we'll pick up more peppers tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, chives and Mongolian beef. This is so good. Thank you, Simone, for making these amazing dishes.
It's absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for choosing dishes that you like.
You came up with a new way to mass batch fried beef for these. That works really well.
I didn't. You did. And it's a cumbersome process. So I don't know if we'll do it again. I just don't like deep frying. I don't like the smell it makes. I don't like all the oil. It's lame.
You're right. So what I'm thinking is, if I do this again, I can deep fry it myself in the deep fryer, and just do like a very large, like 5 batches or something. One night.
We did. It was 4 pounds of meat that we did.
Yeah, and I'll do even more. Because it creates blanks that we can use with multiple dishes.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, love you.
I love you too, gorgeous. God, no, I don't want to move because he's asleep. It's like have you ever had a cat fall asleep on your lap? And you're like, I can't get up now.
No, but he'll have a great time when he wakes up. You can't have him sleep for too long. Otherwise, he'll stay up all night.
He wakes up all night anyway because he's hungry. He needs to eat.
By the way, tomorrow I'm thinking of doing the Israel one.
Okay.
While we're at the tail end of Nick Fuentes stuff, because I think it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting episode.
Yeah, I haven't heard that take anywhere before, so I'm a fan. I mean, not that I like listen to a ton of Israel commentary, but it makes sense to me, and now I just want it. And I will this from a more, because just before coming into this, I was listening to a Matt Bernstein podcast on Mamdani and Israel and anti-Jewish sentiment, and like everything's just like, are you pro-Jew or anti-Jew? Or like people, I mean, they're actually anti-Zionist Jews mostly on that podcast, if I'm reading it right. But like everything's just so politicized around Zionism as a concept, but Zionism from the perspective of like the Jewish people have a right to Israel as like a thing, you know, like we need to give them like Jerusalem because of their like religious birthright. And you and I don't, as much as we support them running things in Israel because they do a good job and you took it and you're doing well with it, so it's yours, like by all means. That doesn't mean we have this same weird sentiment around like, oh yes, it is your religious prerogative to hold this land. Yeah.
That is actually, well, I mean, as I say, our form of conservatism is very Nietzschean in nature, which is to say, if they can hold the land, then
it's theirs.
Yes.
You are entitled to that which you can take. Which
also makes it, make more sense to say, we'll cut off military aid to them. If they can't keep the land without our military aid after 70 years, then they shouldn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
But I think more broadly, it would just make our ties with them much stronger if we just removed that.
Well, and I would like to align ourselves with them in a way that leans us both into the future instead of reactively entrenches both of us in conflict with adversaries. Because to a certain point, feeling these conflicts keeps them going in the first place. So I'm not for it.
All right. Love you.
I love you too. Bye. Bye.
Octavian, explain what happened. You saw a 6'7" kid, you said? And how did the 6'7" kid come in your room at night? Did he come in because you were watching bad YouTube videos?
No. I looked what your mom would do. I was going to do the happy meal 3 a.m. in the night. Then the 6-7 happy meal. Then if you order that, then the 6-7 thing. We'll connect you. So please don't do that. Please.
So don't order a Happy Meal, a 6-7 Happy Meal at 3 a.m. at night, or the 6-7 kid will come after you.
Yeah.
But I thought what does he do behind trees?
It spawns behind them.
He spawns behind them?
Yeah.
So
Like that, so you open it and see it.
So he could be like in the woods?
Yeah.
Well, what are you going to tell our subscribers? How do they keep their kids safe?
We keep our kids safe. How? Like, just stay inside of it.
Stay inside?
Yeah.
And what about liking and subscribing? Did that help?
Yeah, that will help. Yeah, we don't know if it actually will. So like and subscribe to help us. And even like and subscribe for us to be safe and you to be safe.
So they won't be safe from 6-7 unless they like and subscribe. That's what you're saying?
I think the car eater video, the car eater did attack the drone one time. And I think that's because they give us a lot of subscribers. So we're gonna like try to buy a drone with that. And please give us like and subscribe to 1,000, please. So I can just so like tiny drone doesn't get attacked.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that we buy from this store when we show you the video with our phones and everything. And we're gonna go boop, 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 and try to defeat the 6-7 kid with a bullet black, okay?
Okay.